Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Harmoning with the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce. Today, I am pleased to be joined by the Savage Chamber of Commerce to help us co-host this Meet the Candidate event. Our moderator today is Brady Folkstedt with Lakeview Bank, our chair of our Public Policy Committee. I will turn it over to Brady.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, I'm Brady Folkstedt with Lakeview Bank and the chair of the Public Policy Committee for the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce. Special welcome to our friends from Savage that are joining us as well for our House District 55A Meet the Candidate. It's important to note that both candidates from the major parties were invited. Jess Hanson is joining us today. Gabriella was unable to join us for today's event. With that, then, instead of going back and forth, it will be a Meet the Candidate with Jess Hanson, and she will let us know a little bit more about the views on the questions that the Chamber of Commerce has come up with. With that, we will jump in. Jess, you've got a couple of minutes. Could you give us a little bit of information about yourself and what motivated you to run for office?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, welcome everybody who's watching online, both the Savage Chamber of Commerce and the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Brady and Jennifer, for inviting me and for having me today. My name is Jess Hanson. I'm the current state representative for District 56A through redistricting. We are now 55A, and I'm running for re-election for that seat as well. And I ran for office because I believe that politics is how we care about each other and that we deserve a responsible government. Those are the two most important aspects that I was raised to believe are important, to make sure that we're taking care of our neighbors, prioritizing those who are the most vulnerable in our communities, and making sure that we're making responsible decisions that ultimately benefit the common good. I grew up in Lakeville, in a trailer park there in Ardmore Village, and I never thought I'd become a politician, but here I am, and this is the dream job. Representing this community has been amazing. It is just an absolute honor and blessing to get to do so, and I am looking forward to earning more votes in the community to continue to represent us in years to come as well.
Thanks, Jess. With that, we're going to move into a series of questions here. 5 questions. You'll have a minute each, so some of them are a little weighty, and so they'll have to be brisk in their answers. One thing I forgot to tell you before we started is I will help you keep time. When my background's green, you're free to talk. Yellow, you'll be in your last 15 seconds, and when it turns red, that's the time is up, so we can make sure that our viewers can get all their answers as quickly as possible as well. With that, one thing that we've noticed in the business community is there's a shortage of workers in all sectors of our economy. What can be done at the state level to assist in the development of the workforce locally here, as well as immigrants historically have been relied upon to fill some of the gaps in the workforce? How can we better integrate those folks into our community?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a really great one, and so I'm glad we're talking about this. You know, one thing, I'm really proud that we have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the nation, let alone just in our state. But this workforce issue continues to be something we have to keep addressing. And so at the state level, we can do quite a few things. I would say first, we need to make sure that Minnesota stays a great place to work, live, and raise a family. And that helps attract workers to our state and as well as retain workers in our state. So what does that look like? That looks like passing policies like paid family medical leave. It means passing policies like earn sick and safe time, removing red tape for businesses to start. It means protecting the right to collectively bargain and making sure that we protect defined benefit pension plans. And it's making sure that everyone has access to affordable health care. So those are some very important pieces. And I think also attracting workers to our states means that we have to pass do some new industries. I'm going to say the next part quickly, but I also think on the immigrant piece of it, it's important that we pass driver's licenses for all. And I just want to say thank you to the state chamber and law enforcement and all of the folks in that coalition who are working on that, because I think that will help make sure that everyone feels safe, valued, and appreciated in the workplace too.
Thank you. And thanks for keeping it close to the time. With that, school funding, it's an issue. It's an issue every campaign cycle. It comes around each and every time. Does the funding formula for schools need to be changed? If so, how? Or how do we make the public dollars be more effective in our public school system?
Again, really great question. As I'm out talking to voters and out in the community, this is coming up so often. One thing that's very clear is our community cares deeply about making sure that our public education system is funded and supported. And so I'm really grateful for folks to continuing to be committed to that. And so I've said since my first campaign, I think this funding formula needs to be adjusted. I represent a pretty unique situation. On one side of the district, we have 191, and then on the other, we have PLSAS. One of those districts is among the most wealthy in the state, and one are among the least wealthy in the state. And so that's not to say that this quality of services necessarily are any different. You know, I have kids in the Burnsville school district and talk to plenty of folks with kids in PLSAS, but that means that they're having to do things very differently. So how the services are delivered in one community is different. And that means right here in our community, we have kids getting a different kind of education or having staff making different kinds of decisions based on where the zip code of the kid is. And so I don't think that is right. And then I think the last thing I'll say is we need to make sure we address the special education cross subsidy that has continued to be an issue, and closing that gap is going to be what's best for everybody in that.
Thank you. Another one, of course, these do come out of the business community. This question has been part of state chamber as well as a local chamber here. It was publicized. Minnesota Pollution Control Agency signed on and transitioned our emission standards to the California emission standards here recently. California now has adopted a ban on the sale of new fossil fuel powered vehicles starting in 2035. How do you believe this affects the state of Minnesota? And is this a move you plan on supporting moving forward?
Another great question. And the place I start when I talk to folks about this is that we live in a capitalistic society. For those of folks in the business community, this is clear. We know that. But the car manufacturers have told us that they intend to stop manufacturing gas-powered vehicles after 2035. And so as government, I do think it's important that we are ready to address that. That demand for electric vehicles is high among consumers right now. And I think the other piece of this is we need to make sure that we're investing in the infrastructure we need so that once we get to a place where that is the predominant vehicle on the road, that we have adequate infrastructure like charging stations and that's affordable, and electricity generation and such. I also think that, you know, this change is not just about cars or about the economy. This is about climate change as well. I want my kids and all the kids in Minnesota to grow up in a state like I grew up in, where our air and our water is clean and swimmable and drinkable. And so as we talk about these standards, I think we have to remember that we are creating the future that we want our kids and grandkids to live in. And so that's really important as well. And lastly, I think there is a place for regulation when it comes to that transition to make sure that people who do still have gas-powered vehicles after 2035 aren't the ones getting hit with the cost of oil. I think that'll be on the federal level, but I think it's worth noting here.
Thank you. This next question really is an outgrowth of what happened on the Minnesota pollution control transition, and that's more than anything, business community, we desire consistency and stability in our laws and regulation. How do we prevent mass regulation change back and forth every time a new governor gets elected?
That's another great question. As many of you know, my great-grandfather and folks in my family have owned businesses in the district for many decades. And so between them and all the time I spend with community business owners, I have heard a lot about this. And I think as I look at the whole structure, the whole system that's there, what I will always continue to come back to is our collective power when we come together. The state chamber does a great job of that. Our local chambers, when you guys came and visited me at my office, I was able to turn around and take that information right back to my team and be able to really make sure we're coming up with solutions that are community driven. And so we have to think that sometimes these regulations are intended to help businesses and sometimes they're intended to help workers. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're all standing together to really advocate for changes that are for the common good and that don't pit workers or anyone against each other. And so that's collective bargaining. I see a lot of power that comes out of our unions in advocating either for or against regulation changes. And so whatever collective power looks like to us at the community level, that's what we should continue to do. So come to the Capitol, be heard, call me, text me, all of those things.
Thank you. We're moving quick through these. So this is the first one we've done where we've only had one candidate in attendance here. So we can give you a second so you can catch your breath a little bit.
Oh, you know I talk fast, Brady. I got this.
There you go. With that, local businesses, we know crime affects them a lot, and businesses fare far better in periods of lower crime. Currently, state of Minnesota and nationally, there's an uptick in criminal activity. What can be done at the state level to assist our communities, specifically in this case, Savage and Burnsville, to make sure that we have the lowest crime rate possible?
Another great question that I would be remiss if I didn't start off by just thanking our local law enforcement and first responders. They've done a really great job of making sure that they can continuously improve in their community interactions. I just spoke with an officer this morning at the State of the City address in Savage, just to give some feedback about what I'm hearing on the doors. Folks are feeling like the police are there to assist them, which is great. I'm getting a lot of good feedback about the mental health changes that they've put in, and I think that's great. What we can continue to do at the state level is make sure we're investing in community-specific resources. So that means not just putting blanket funding into one particular issue. That means giving money to local police departments to use that money how they see fit in their community. Maybe they need a social worker, maybe they need a helicopter, maybe they need a new boat, right? But at the end of the day, those communities know what they need best. I was really glad to see that the violent crime rates in Savage have stayed pretty stable. In Burnsville, we did see a little bit of an uptick. So as we talk about crime prevention overall, that means that we have good jobs, good paying jobs. That means that we have good housing. That means folks in our community have full bellies. And that means that we're making sure that folks are not committing crimes from a place of desperation. And I know my time is up, but there's one last piece that's really important to Scott County that I think impacts this as well, which is making sure we have enough community probation and parole officers. There was a shortage of those last year, and I fought really hard to make sure we can do that to continue to reduce recidivism as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for enlightening us a little bit on the crime stats as well here in the South Metro. With that, 55A now, it's a little difficult to say based on the redistricting, but 55A, why would you be the best candidate to represent our area in closing here?
I think that this community deserves a government that is responsible and that cares about it. Like I said in the beginning, these are the two decisions and lenses, if you will, that I make all of the decisions at the Capitol through. And I have a proven record of making sure we get really good work done. For example, in the city of Burnsville, there were legislative agenda items that had been on their agenda for many years that we passed in my first term. We want to make sure we're addressing the infrastructure needs. So we were able to get that Dakota bonding money down on 13 to make sure that the ports of Savage continue to be a safe place for our drivers, whether they're driving trucks and transporting goods or moms that are transporting kids. You know, we need to make sure our roads are safe. And then lastly, I think I have a scrappy side of me that makes sure that we can go into these conversations about what's important for our community and really, really advocate for us in a way that I'm really proud of. And so I would encourage folks to look at my record, look at the bills I've passed. It's for stuff for people with disabilities. It's stuff to make sure we're addressing our mental health crisis. It's stuff to make sure that we are keeping food in everyone's bellies and that we are, at the end of the day, honoring everybody's dignity and worth in this community. And that's the attitude I bring to the Capitol every single day when I do this work. And I would be honored to go back and continue to represent what I think is the best community in Minnesota.
Thank you. And Jess, thank you very much for taking time today. Everybody joining us from both the Burnsville and Savage chambers. We were joined by Jess Hanson, DFL endorsed candidate for House District 55A. Once again, brief reminder that both candidates were invited and were given advance notice of the forum, as well as provided the questions in advance. With that, thank you again, Jess, very much. We appreciate it. And I'll turn that back over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Brady. Thank you for all your work in moderating these forums for us. And thank you to our candidates who've taken the time to run for office, and to Jess for being here today. We know that that's a heavy lift and we appreciate the service. And thank you to my partner at the Savage Chamber. we look forward to posting these recordings for voters to use when they're choosing their elected officials in November. Thanks so much and have a great day.